I was sorting through mail at the kitchen table when my grandson Ethan walked in from swim practice. It was a Tuesday evening around 6:15. The late October sun had already set over Portland, Oregon, and our house felt warm and cozy with the heat running. Ethan dropped his swim bag by the door, but instead of heading straight to the shower like he usually did, he stood there, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Grandma," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "can I switch to a different swim team?" I looked up from the stack of envelopes, my hands stilled. Ethan had been swimming competitively for 3 years, ever since he came to live with us after his parents died in that terrible accident on I-5. Swimming had been his therapy, his joy, the one thing that made him smile after months of grief counseling. "Switch teams? Honey, you love the Riverside Dolphins. Coach Mitchell says you're one of his strongest swimmers." Ethan's face went pale. He twisted the drawstring of his hoodie around his finger. "I know, but I just want to try somewhere else. Maybe the community center team?" Something in his tone made my stomach drop. I'd been a middle school teacher for 35 years before retiring. I knew when a child was hiding something. "Ethan, come sit with me." I patted the chair next to mine. "What's really going on?" He sat down slowly, eyes fixed on the table. "Coach Mitchell. He's been acting weird." "Weird how?" "He keeps asking me to stay after practice to help him organize equipment in the storage room. Just me, not the other kids. And last week," Ethan's voice cracked, "last week I forgot my towel and had to go back to the locker room after everyone left. Coach Mitchell was in there with his phone, and when he saw me, he got really angry and told me I should always knock first. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Where was his phone pointed, sweetheart?" "At the shower area. But he said he was just checking the water temperature settings because some parents complained. He showed me this app on his phone that's supposed to control the water heater." Every alarm bell in my head started ringing. I'd read enough news stories. I'd sat through enough safety training sessions during my teaching career. "Does Coach Mitchell ever ask you to keep secrets?" Ethan nodded miserably. "He says the storage room work is our special thing because I'm responsible. He gives me $20 each time and says not to tell the other kids because they'd get jealous." I felt my hands start to shake. I gripped the edge of the table. "Ethan, I need you to do something very important. I need you not to go into that storage room alone anymore. If Coach Mitchell asks, tell him you forgot something. Tell him your grandmother is picking you up early. Whatever you need to say. Can you do that?" He looked relieved. "You believe me?" "Of course I believe you. You did exactly the right thing telling me." I pulled him into a hug. "This is not your fault. Adults should never ask children to keep secrets from their parents or grandparents." After Ethan went upstairs to shower, I sat at that kitchen table trying to keep my breathing steady. My husband James was at his weekly chess club meeting. I needed to talk to someone, needed to figure out what to do. I called my friend Patricia, who'd been a child psychologist for 40 years before retiring. She lived 15 minutes away in the same neighborhood. "Pat, I need you to come over right now. It's about Ethan." "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Patricia arrived with her professional demeanor intact, despite being in yoga pants and a cardigan. I told her everything while Ethan was upstairs doing homework. She listened, took notes, asked specific questions about exactly what Ethan had said. "Margaret, this is serious. The phone in the locker room, the isolation, the money, the secrecy, these are textbook grooming behaviors. You need to report this to the police immediately." "But what if I'm wrong? What if there really is a water heater app?" James recommended this team. Coach Mitchell was his colleague's son. Everyone says he's wonderful with kids. Patricia shook her head. "Margaret, in my 40 years of practice, I've learned that predators are often the most charming, most trusted people in a community. That's how they get access. And the water heater story? That's manipulation. Modern water heaters don't need phone monitoring. That's ridiculous. But I don't have proof. You have your grandson's testimony. You have concerning behavior patterns. The police have resources to investigate. What if Ethan isn't the only child? What if there are other parents who've noticed things but said nothing because they didn't want to cause trouble?" After Patricia left, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through James's things. Not because I thought my husband was involved in anything criminal, but I needed to understand how Coach David Mitchell had come into our lives. James had been the one to suggest the Riverside Dolphins. He'd driven Ethan to tryouts. He'd paid the registration fees. In James's office, I found a folder labeled Ethan, Activities. Inside were registration forms, practice schedules, and a business card. David Mitchell, head coach, Riverside Dolphins swim team. On the back, in James's handwriting, Tom's son. Good guy. Ethan will thrive here. Tom. That was Tom Harrison, James's former colleague from his engineering firm. They'd worked together for 20 years before both retiring. I kept searching. In James's email, I found the thread where Tom had recommended his son. David just moved back to Portland after coaching in Sacramento. He's great with kids, very dedicated. Some of his swimmers even go to his house for extra training sessions in his home pool. Home pool. Extra training sessions. Private house. My blood ran cold. I took screenshots of everything on my phone. Then I kept digging. In the shared family computer's download folder, I found something that made me feel physically ill. A PDF file titled Riverside Dolphins Winter Schedule. But when I opened it, it wasn't a schedule. It was a liability waiver form with our signatures. James's signature and mine, though I'd never seen this document before. Someone had forged my signature. The waiver gave permission for extended one-on-one coaching sessions at Coach's private residence for advanced swimmers. I read it 3 times. Ethan had never mentioned going to Coach Mitchell's house, but this document, with my forged signature, gave legal permission for exactly that. I heard James's car pull into the driveway. It was 8:30. He came in through the garage, whistling, carrying his chess set. "Margaret, sorry I'm late. Tournament went into overtime. Is there any dinner left?" I was standing in the kitchen, the printed waiver in my hands. "James, we need to talk about David Mitchell." His face brightened. "Oh, great. I was just telling the guys at chess club how well Ethan's doing with swimming. Tom would be so proud that his son is making such a difference. Did you sign this?" I held up the waiver. James squinted at it, then pulled out his reading glasses. "What is it?" "A permission slip for Ethan to go to Coach Mitchell's house for private training." "What? I never signed that. We never discussed private training." He took the paper from me, studying it closely. "This signature looks like mine, but I definitely didn't." "Margaret, what's going on?" I told him everything. About Ethan's request to switch teams, about the storage room, about the phone in the locker room, about Patricia's concerns. With each sentence, James's face went from confusion to disbelief to horror. No, that can't be right. David is Tom's son. Tom's a good man. He vouched for David personally. "When was the last time you spoke to Tom?" James thought about it. "Not since the retirement party 3 years ago. But we email occasionally. Forward me those emails." He did, right there at the kitchen table, his hands shaking as he typed on his phone. I read through them. The last email from Tom was from 2 months ago, a brief note saying David had moved back to Portland and was looking to build his coaching career. "James, I need you to call Tom, right now. Ask him about David's coaching history in Sacramento. It's almost 9 o'clock. Call him." James dialed. I could hear Tom's voice on the other end, surprised but friendly. James made small talk for a minute, then said casually, "Hey, how's David doing with his coaching? Ethan's on his team." There was a pause. Then Tom's voice changed. "James, David isn't coaching. He's working at a tech startup downtown. He hasn't been involved in swimming since college." James's face went white. "But he's the head coach of the Riverside Dolphins. He's been coaching Ethan for 6 months. That's impossible. David's never coached professionally. James, what's happening?" "I'll call you back." James hung up. He looked at me. "Margaret, who the hell has been coaching Ethan?" We went to the Riverside Dolphins website. There, under staff, was a photo of Coach David Mitchell. James pulled up a photo from Tom's Facebook page of the real David Mitchell. Different person entirely. "Someone's using his name," I said. "Someone researched Tom's son and stole his identity to create credibility." James stood up so fast his chair fell over. "We're calling the police. Now." We drove to the police station at 9:15 on a Tuesday night. The desk sergeant listened to our story and called in Detective Lisa Morrison from the Special Victims Unit. Detective Morrison had short gray hair and the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. But when she listened to us talk about Ethan, about the phone in the locker room, about the forged waiver. Her expression sharpened. "Mr. and Mrs. Hartley, I'm going to be very direct with you. What you're describing sounds like a sophisticated predator who's done this before. The identity theft, the forged documents, the isolation techniques. This isn't opportunistic. This is planned." She asked to speak with Ethan. We called him down from his room. Detective Morrison was gentle but thorough. She asked about the storage room, about the phone, about whether Coach Mitchell had ever touched him inappropriately or asked him to touch Coach Mitchell. Ethan said no to all those questions, but he mentioned something new. "Coach Mitchell sometimes gives us these special protein bars after practice. He says they're expensive imported ones that help build muscle, but they taste kind of bitter." Detective Morrison's jaw tightened. "Do you still have any of these protein bars?" "There's one in my swim bag." 10 minutes later, Detective Morrison was sealing a protein bar in an evidence bag. "We'll have this tested. Mr. and Mrs. Hartley, I'm going to ask for your permission to set up a controlled operation. We need to catch this individual in the act." "What kind of operation?" James asked. "Thursday is your grandson's regular practice day, correct? We'll have officers positioned around the facility. We'll have Ethan wear a concealed recording device. If Coach Mitchell attempts to isolate Ethan or engage in any inappropriate behavior, we'll have probable cause for arrest and search warrants." I looked at Ethan. He was scared, but he nodded. "I don't want him to do this to other kids." "You're very brave, Ethan," Detective Morrison said. "We're going to keep you safe." The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I'd waved goodbye to Ethan at swim practice, trusting that he was safe. James was devastated. He blamed himself for recommending the team, for not doing more research, for trusting Tom's name without verifying. "You didn't know," I told him. "This person is a professional. He planned this." Wednesday evening, Detective Morrison came to our house with the lab results on the protein bar. It contains a mild sedative. Not enough to knock someone out, but enough to make them drowsy and compliant. Combined with the forged documents and Ethan's testimony, we have enough for a search warrant once we make the arrest. Thursday afternoon, I drove Ethan to practice with my heart in my throat. Detective Morrison and 2 other officers were in an unmarked van in the parking lot. Ethan had a small recording device hidden in his swim bag, designed to look like a phone charger. "Remember," Detective Morrison had told him, "don't do anything dangerous. If he asks you to go to the storage room, you go, but leave the door open. We'll be right outside." I watched Ethan walk into the aquatic center with his swim bag over his shoulder. He looked so small, so vulnerable. I wanted to run after him, pull him back, take him home where he was safe. But I knew this had to happen. For Ethan, for the other children. I sat in my car, my phone in my lap, volume turned all the way up, waiting for Detective Morrison's call. Practice started. 30 minutes passed, 45 minutes. I could see parents arriving to pick up their children. Normal families, normal day. Then my phone rang. "Mrs. Hartley, we need you to come inside. It's over." I ran. Through the parking lot, through the main entrance, past the front desk. Detective Morrison met me in the hallway. "We have him. Ethan is safe." She led me to the pool area. Parents and children were being ushered out by uniformed officers. At the far end of the pool, I saw him. The man I'd thought was Coach David Mitchell, now in handcuffs, arguing loudly that this was all a misunderstanding. Ethan was sitting on a bench with a female officer, wrapped in a towel, looking shaken but unharmed. I ran to him and pulled him into my arms. "You are so brave, baby. So brave." Detective Morrison came over. Ethan did exactly what we asked. The suspect invited him to the storage room, said he had a special protein bar for him. Ethan left the door open like we instructed. "We have everything on recording." "Who is he?" James had arrived, running in from the parking lot. "Who the hell is he really?" "His real name is Marcus Webb. He has warrants in 3 states for child endangerment, possession of child exploitation material, and identity theft. He's been using different names, different identities, gaining access to youth sports programs. This is the first time we've caught him in the act." They took Marcus Webb away in handcuffs. He was screaming about lawyers and false accusations, but I saw his face when Detective Morrison mentioned the search warrant for his home. He knew they'd find something. They did. The search of Marcus Webb's rental house uncovered cameras hidden in equipment bags, hundreds of photos and videos of children in locker rooms from multiple facilities over the past 5 years, and a collection of fake IDs and forged documents. The investigation revealed that he'd been using the Riverside Dolphins facility for 8 months. Ethan wasn't his only target. There were 3 other families whose children had mentioned feeling uncomfortable but hadn't reported it because they didn't want to seem dramatic. Marcus Webb was charged with 14 felony counts, including child endangerment, distribution of child exploitation material, identity theft, forgery, and administering controlled substances to minors. The protein bars had tested positive for diazepam, a prescription sedative. With his history and the evidence, he pleaded guilty in exchange for 30 years in prison. The Riverside Dolphins organization was shut down pending investigation. Several board members resigned. The facility implemented new safety protocols requiring background checks, security cameras in public areas, and mandatory 2 adult supervision policies. James struggled with guilt for months. Even though the police confirmed he couldn't have known, even though Marcus Webb had fooled experienced youth sports administrators before, James blamed himself. We went to therapy together. Dr. Sarah Chen helped us work through the trauma, helped Ethan process what had happened without letting it define him. Slowly, our family healed. Ethan joined a new swim team with strict safety protocols. He still loved swimming, still competed, but now he knew to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. I started volunteering with a local organization that teaches children about personal safety, about recognizing manipulation, about the difference between good secrets and bad secrets. I spoke at schools, at parent meetings, at community centers. 1 year after the arrest, Ethan and I were invited to speak at a police community forum about child safety. Ethan, now 11, stood at the microphone and said, "I learned that if something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. And adults who ask you to keep secrets from your parents or grandparents aren't safe adults." The room full of parents and community members applauded. But what stayed with me was what he said afterward, when we were walking to the car. "Grandma, do you think we saved other kids by telling the truth?" "Yes, sweetheart, I absolutely do." James and I still live in Portland. Ethan is thriving. He made honor roll last semester and is teaching younger kids on his new swim team proper technique. His coach jokes that Ethan is better at spotting safety violations than the facility manager. Sometimes I think about that Tuesday evening when Ethan walked into the kitchen and asked to switch teams. What if I'd said no? What if I'd dismissed his concerns as typical kid complaints? What if I'd been too busy to notice that something was wrong? But I did notice. And I acted. And that made all the difference. This is my story. A story about trusting your instincts, about protecting the children in your care, about how evil can hide behind a friendly smile and a stolen name. But more importantly, it's a story about a brave boy who spoke up, about a family that listened, and about how we learned that safety is more important than convenience or politeness. Did you like the story? Let me know where you're listening from in the comments. And if you want to support me in creating more stories like this, you can send a super thanks. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next one.